What's up, everybody? Thanks so much for tuning in. On today's episode of conventioNOT, we've got a very special guest, Anna McDevitt. Now, the last name may sound familiar, and that's because she's Ryan's better half. We didn't bring her on the show to necessarily talk about her story, but we brought her on because she's an expert in the subject of mindfulness and yoga. See, I actually met Anna at Kent State before I knew Ryan or Mike. Anna's taught me so much over the years. Most importantly, she's taught me to feel what I feel. It's okay to feel vulnerable. It's okay to feel proud. It's okay if I feel anxious. And if Anna was nervous about making her conventioNOT debut, I couldn't tell. She didn't miss a beat. Anyway, check out our conversation because she's about to drop some jewels on you. Enjoy the show.
Skrilla, do you have like a suitcase filled with Skrilla gear that you roll in with to the studio? Or like, how's that get set up?
It's kind of like a drawstring backpack that I bring with me.
Okay.
I'll have my iPad in there, maybe some scented candles, essential oils, things like that.
Really? Is it a full on like? I can't help it, man. I have this picture I just paint in my head of you like going into that mode and like just going in, but it's not as comfortable as what you just described,
Yeah, it all depends. I like to get in there and like be on time. So I'll text the engineer, hey, like, can you have everything ready? Like the mic's hot. I just walk right in, boom, game time. So that's how I like to work. When there's like technical issues and like stuff just isn't set up, then I get like
it throws
annoyed.
You totally off, right? Yeah, no, I can't even imagine. So sorry, on that note, Anna, if we can introduce you a little bit more properly. We're lucky enough to have 4 of us chatting today. Yeah. And Ryan's lovely wife and considerably better half, Anna McDevitt, has joined us today. So Anna, if you would like to, no pressure, but if you would like to provide any other form of intro, you are much, much more than Ryan's wife. I just don't want to sell you short. So
I appreciate that. Thanks. Hi, guys. It's weird because I know all of you so well. So like introducing myself while staring at all of your faces on Zoom is like a really weird
Yeah,
thing.
You're not talking to us.
Yeah, and Ryan, I could see Ryan looking at me in real life on the like through the video. I see him looking at me, sitting right. Anyway, yes, but I know this is not about our experience. We're sharing this. You gotta keep looking at your screen.
We're just here.
It's a fun dynamic. Today we've had Nicole on a couple times, but like she is for as small as she is, she's a really capable bull in a china shop. So like she literally just like walks over and just slowly nudges me off the screen and then like takes my headphones and it's like, okay, we're going to transfer this. We're not going to try to do it at the same time.
That's great. I love that.
But I applaud you guys. I mean, this shows some real unity, and I'm impressed that you're willing to give this a go. In that proximity, I think that's the challenge.
We've had a lot of practice.
Yeah, that's true.
So I am Anna McDevitt, listeners. And I'm Ryan's wife, yes, but we also built a business together. And during this time of COVID have inhabited like basically a studio apartment together. So yeah, we've had a lot of practice, like having to navigate our space and coordinate. And, we're like good at it now.
Well, I mean that clearly you guys are, and that's partners in life goes without saying, but like the fact that you've successfully built businesses together. I know the transition from that is always, I'm sure, incredibly difficult, but you guys are kind of in one of those transitions right now. And well, we all are with coronavirus, but I love the connectivity here, right? Like Anna, you and I feel like somehow met before Ryan in some capacity, just maybe like the Michigan State days, like just being around. I don't know. I feel like we met before Ferndale. Let's put it that way. You and Skrilla,
Really?
though, I don't. Yeah, I've just between like the small circle of people in Michigan.
It was a small world.
But you and Skrilla go back. I mean, what?
Kent State.
I mean, when did you guys both go to school?
Kent
You don't
State.
have to date yourself, but I mean, it's been a good decade.
Yeah, but
2000 something.
something, and what it's probably like junior year of college.
Yeah.
So we're the same age. Yeah.
I would see Anna around, but I was never formally introduced to her until it had to be junior year. Yeah.
That's when we like actually met each other.
Right. And I'm like,
in person.
You're
And
Anna.
we're like, we were both kind of like, yeah, I know you. We should probably know each other. Like, what's up? And we just started talking.
Is Kent State like that small of a school, or did you guys like just same program, or what was the?
Well, so Kent is not a small school, but we ran in the same circles. And so we met through the Greek community at Kent State. So
gotcha.
And to be fair, Chris is going to hate this.
Oh boy.
But he's also going to love it. He was like a celebrity on campus. Like
Nice.
everybody knew who DJ Skrilla was.
He's
Really?
negotiated around that point a few times.
Absolutely. Like I knew who you were before you knew who I was, for sure.
He's so uncomfortable. There's only a sliver of him still on his own screen. So
I'm learning to embrace
He's directing his own movie and just walking off the screen. I love it, man.
Yeah, it's great.
So that's easy to imagine, but Chris does such a good job of like just running away from that reality. And every time Ryan and I try to like dig into like, come on, man, like tell us about being up on the stage. He just like, it's a real short story. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he doesn't want to swim in his own water. I love that about him. I really do.
I like to pivot and deflect on others. Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about your story. I'm trying to get better at that though. I really am. I'm trying to.
Well, I'll do it for you. So like Chris would like be like touring, like so he you'd be like, hey, like what's up? Like what are you doing this weekend? And he'd be like, well, we're just flying out to like University of Alabama. They're doing like this whole concert, and so we're like performing for like 6,000 people or something. I don't know. I might
very
be making
casual.
But that's so pretty.
Like, wait, you're doing what?
As a college student,
this was all the time. Yeah, all the time.
It was grueling.
And so,
it was a lot of work.
You did not have like the regular college experience. Like you were hanging out with the frat party, and like, you were one of the DJs at the local like bar that everyone went to in downtown Kent. And so like you were doing all those things and like, obviously going to school, but then there was all this other like thing, this whole other like life of like touring and like making music for people, and like people like knew you. And this was all like pre-social media stuff. So Facebook was a thing, but it was only Facebook for college students back then. But like this was pre-Twitter, pre-Instagram, any of that. But like you were probably
Facebook. I had an AOL email address, man. That's how people would get a hold of me.
I will never forget. We were in college when that shit dropped, man. When Facebook dropped, it really was hot or not. Like that's all it was. I mean, and the only way you had access to it was like if you got in. Right? Like, remember when Facebook started? You had to be a university student.
Your .edu email address
in order to even sign on to Facebook.
Yeah,
that makes me feel like a pioneer.
Good old days.
Just being one of the millions of people that joined Facebook. Like we talk about it this way, and I'm like, man, that was really adventurous of us.
At least there was some kind of validation then, right? I mean, I think anybody could have a Facebook page now. Perhaps they should slide back to some sort of like real human validation.
Filter.
You don't even need to be a real person. You could just be a bot.
Yeah, right.
Boom.
You would go to a party and we're all like around that time, you know, like you're 19, 20 years old, and like you'd go to a party and you'd meet all these people, and then you'd wake up the next day and like you'd have some like Facebook friend requests because like those are the people you met at that part, and you'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. And then you have like a face to the name, and then it made it so much easier to like stay connected to all these people, because before then it was AOL Instant Messenger. Like that's how
that was it.
You knew what was going on at Kent State, at least.
Well, as a musician, Chris, you must have had a banging MySpace page, right? Like I would imagine yours was, I never even had MySpace, but I would imagine yours was like next level.
I mean, I don't know about the next level, but it was pretty cool. I mean, when MySpace was out, it was like, yo, this is the hottest thing. If you do music, you better have a MySpace page, like for real.
Yeah.
That's how I learned to code a little bit, was MySpace. Because you learn how to like change the colors. You could change. It was HTML then.
Yeah. It was a little source, right? Like I don't know if that's the right. Look at me trying to pretend I know what the fuck I'm talking about. The stuff you hate to see when it comes up on your
screen. Your top friends? Huh? Remember that?
Well, that's what I was thinking about. Like I remember a point in college where someone asking me about friends, quantifying, like they were asking, and this happened regularly, where people would ask you how many friends you had on Facebook. Do you remember when that was like a thing? Like that was a goal, was to up your friend numbers. Like I
think that's still a thing, Mike.
I mean, I know that's still a thing.
You just don't care now.
Well, for me, I don't mind when it goes down. It's a little bit, makes life a little bit easier. I know what I'm up to, man. If those numbers grow, that's not a good thing. I don't need new friends other than Skrilla. That's the newest friend I made in the past like 5 years. It's been really fruitful. I've enjoyed that.
You're talking about real friends.
Real friends. Yeah, real friends.
Real friends.
There is that difference. And I guess you did this at one point in time too. You disconnected and broke away from Facebook. There is that part that like when you make those friends at a party in college, or like you had a class with them one time, and now it's 11 years later and you're reading about like what they thought they might vote about because they wanted to, let the world know what their thought was. It turns into being this like a little bit different thing, because a lot of times you didn't really know them, right? I mean, we've got to know each other through that Marco Polo app. I guess Marco Polo keeps coming up, but Skrilla and Mike and I have really, spent a lot of time bonded through that app, and that's a way different type of environment than MySpace. You just try to send MySpace messages like some girls you wanted to meet, or like like some person that you met one time and you try to connect with them or something.
Well, one of the things,
people want something deeper.
One of the things, I mean, I think we've probably all gained to appreciate this over the past few months, is how different communication is when it's associated with not just a voice, but also facial expression and, visually seeing the person you're talking to. I don't know about for you guys, man, but the first time I think Skype introduced that concept to me, right? Where it's like a phone call, you get to see the person you're talking to. And from the very first time I did it, it was such a tangible difference from the phone conversations I had with that exact same person in, very recently. Because for me personally, I just need that. I don't need it, but I definitely thrive and kind of depend off like, hey man, are you hearing what I'm saying? And like you get that by looking at someone's eyes and looking at their facial expressions. And the computer, or just the text, is the furthest removed from that. You know what I mean? So it's not surprising that those relationships tend to like linger, whether they should or shouldn't. You know what I mean? They just kind of stay on the back burner, or they hang around for longer than they should because you met somebody when you were 20.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, there's kind of like an art to choosing like your mode of communication, like knowing what should be a text message versus like a phone call. Like there's like nuance in that.
Do you all like have phone conversations anymore? Like, does anybody actually have actual phone conversations?
Yes, but like, it's not necessarily my favorite like mode of communication always. Like that's not my favorite. Like I like the occasional really long phone call. And so sometimes like having just one of those like really nice long conversations with somebody is like nice. And
like, who do you talk on the phone with, Anna?
Like, I'm thinking non-family, like family,
like non-family.
people.
Yeah, I have a few friends that are like phone call people that like every once in a while it's like a 1 to 2 hour long phone call where like you just sort of like you just spend the time. Sometimes it's organic, you know. Sometimes I know that if I like haven't talked to somebody in a long time,
yeah,
like,
you kind of got
a longer phone call.
It's in the calendar a little bit more. No, that makes sense. I mean, that's funny you said that, Chris, because I'm like, what? My mom, my dad, my sisters, like, but outside of family, those phone calls, I don't do them as much as I should. But at the same time, I'm like Anna, I don't do them because it's just not my preferred mode of communication. But maybe I don't know if that's a cop out. I think some of my friends might say that's a cop out.
What about you, Ryan?
I'm big phone call.
Oh, you big phone guy, huh?
I probably talk. I talk to one friend a day, at least on the phone.
You don't got that many friends. Who are you kidding, bro?
Well, it's
You're
a
just
small
scrolling
cycle.
through Facebook.
Small cycle.
It's a bi-weekly cycle. No, I'm just kidding,
it might
Ryan.
be. Maybe I get into the third week, but no, I do. It's not like it has been systematic in my life. I work on lists, but like on my list for the week when I sit down, I will have somebody that I haven't spoken to in 6 months every single week.
It's true. As long as I've known Ryan, which is a while now.
Who are you? I mean, so are you having like 10-minute conversations with people you haven't talked to in 6 months? Because if so, like that's a skill, and I would like you to tell me how that's possible.
Yeah, sometimes, everybody has a different like length and call time, I think, but
call tolerance.
Yeah. So, in most cases, it's a 10 to 15 minute conversation, even if we haven't spoken in quite some time. It started when I was on the road so much, week after week after week. I just,
that makes
maybe
sense.
It didn't start there. I've always done it, but like being more formal about it and like writing it on my daily task list. It's an important part. And so who I call, I have like the family cycle, which are some friends and family for me, like when you talk about bullet. But I also, I really do look through my contacts. And, if I have a call that ends early, if I have a space in my day, I usually try to do it before noon and I just call. Sometimes I'm happier to get voicemail.
I was going to ask you, do you leave voicemails?
Never once.
Oh, so
I bet I haven't left a voicemail in
leave.
5 years. Yeah.
See, we are such different animals.
Hey, thanks for listening today. Are you a reviewer? Do you desire to share your opinion with everybody? Well, don't leave Mike and I at conventioNOT out of your list. Take a second, go out to your podcast provider, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, whatever it is, and review the show. We appreciate it. We read the feedback, and we really need it.
What about y'all? Do y'all leave voicemails?
Well, I got to talk to clients all the time. Well, I wish it was all the time, but the reality is it doesn't happen as often as I'd like. But when I do talk to clients, it's almost always by phone. And a lot of times my clients aren't eager to jump at the phone. So I get sent to voicemail regularly. I don't take it personal, whatever, they're in meetings. But like, I'm not trying to sit around and wait for them to call back. If I've been working on an investigation for 6 months and I got some findings and they're not available when they said they were going to be available, I'll drop you guys see how I talk on Marco Polo. I'll drop a 5-minute voicemail without hesitation. But dude, for me, listen, and I need to be clear about this. It's God. Well, that work mic is not this mic. It's a version of this mic, but it's not the same guy. So for me, it's like I'll leave you guys one of these one day where I'll just like pretend you're a client and I'll leave you a voicemail and you'll be like, you sound like a fucking robot, man. I'm like, yeah, no, that's what they call me for. I need to be the robot. It's almost
like a deposition then for you, right? Like
exactly. I'm not like, I'm not telling them how I'm doing and like asking them about the weather and shit. I'm like, hey, this is who this is. This is the case I'm calling to talk to you about. And boom. here it is. Call me if you have any questions.
So
but a lot of times I just get an email back and they're like, sounds good, man. Go ahead with the report.
So context is everything for that. Like when you decide, like what, because that's in a business setting, you're really like, that's a transfer of information. In that case, like that voicemail is probably a computer file now, which is in a database, which is now on record. And that's the goal, right? So,
well, for me, exactly.
It's an efficiency thing in that case. If you're leaving 5-minute voicemails for like your friends,
I wouldn't have any callbacks.
That's not the right. It's not the right mode. I mean, like maybe in some cases, but like I think so much of it is thinking about who the individual is who is receiving the message. Like who are you specifically talking to, and like how do they want to receive a message?
Well, I have to concede that I think the reason why Ryan and I are so fond of this things like Marco Polo is the control aspect. It's conversation when you want it. So you know what I mean? Like it's just, I feel chatty. I'm going to say something right now. And I got it out of my system. Of course I want a response, but it's like, we'll see. Yeah. You know, and then a half an hour later I'm chatty again and I just leave another one.
Well, and that's kind of how, Chris, you and I started talking more regularly again, was through Marco Polo, because it made it easy. You know, you don't always feel chatty, but you want to connect with your people. And I think also just a matter of timing. Like there's the time when you're feeling chatty, but then there's also the reality of everyday life. And that's my biggest challenge. Like Ryan will have a phone call in the middle of wherever at any point in time. I can't do that. I need there to like not be a bunch of shit going on in the background. Like I need to know that you can hear me okay. Like I need to know that like there's not some weird echo and like you're only getting every other word. Like I want to know that it's like quality.
That makes sense.
Right. And or like we don't have bad cell service. So maybe that's part of call tolerance also. Ryan's willing to tolerate a little more part like of static.
Yeah.
What'd you say? Huh? What? Like,
I can't do it.
No. I'll just call you back. I'll call you back. That's what I do.
Yeah. Or I'll text you.
Right.
Do you guys think that it's interesting, this conversation kind of started off as an introduction a long time ago, 10, 15 years ago. But what we're really focusing on is like the way that we communicate as friends. Do you think that most groups of friends, and this four-person group is kind of an example, do they change their modes of communication the way that we do over the years?
Yeah.
They do? You think we're pretty typical in that way?
Yes.
I think it probably depends on your generation. I don't think 45-year-olds are doing Marco Polo right now. I don't know why I say that. I've actually tried to instill some different modes of communication with my other buddies, and it's not received that well by a lot of people. Like a lot of people are Marco Polo are just like, please don't send me any more of those. I feel pressure. Like, no. And they're like, dude, call me, text me, whatever. That. I just, I get all nervous. I don't like to look at myself while I'm recording. I'm just like, Jesus, I did. Okay. Yeah. No, I don't mean to stress you out. That's what I'm just trying to get better at is like you said, it's not your preferred mode of communication. You want it to be effective. You figure out how the person receiving it, you know, what the best platform for them is, you know, and that's crucial in business and personally. So I'd like to think people are adapting, but I mean, I'm still on some of the same old text threads, you know, that are just, they're definitely not evolving. That is not the word I would use to describe some of those chains.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think texting's like a solid one. You know, it was early and I don't think texting's not going anywhere. Like even when it becomes like, you know, the WhatsApp messaging or whatever, like it's still texting. Mm-hmm.
That
the group text reigns supreme, I think.
Well, and there's all these different ones, right? Like, I don't know why I have 5 different means to text people on my phone. But I literally...
Because you got an Android, that's why.
Oh, shut up. We're not going down that road, all right?
It's true.
Just get the party started.
It is true. I don't want to go down that road either.
Are we doing this? Are we doing this?
No, let's not do it. Let's not do it. We'll have a
Android
different
haters. I have WhatsApp. All my family chats on that one.
I'm happy you have a system that works for you.
I like WhatsApp because the quality doesn't get compromised when you send images.
Mm-hmm.
All right, to be clear.
Because everyone's printing your photos.
No, like visually, like just looking at them. If I send you a picture, it compresses them. So you're like, oh yeah, shitty picture. I'm like, that is an amazing picture. You're not receiving it at its utmost quality. I got this other one called Line. I have no idea. My buddies, bunch of fantasy buddies started that one. I don't know why. I think they it had stickers available or something, like literally.
Like,
man,
your imaginary friends? What's a fantasy buddy?
No, that's a fair question. partial imaginary. No, my buddies that all they want to do is talk about fantasy football and fantasy sports.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's
Mind out the gutter.
that topic never comes up on this show, and I don't want it to. But that is a completely different world that I kind of belong in. That we'll keep that on the side. And then I just have normal texting and Marco Polo. Like, it is a lot now that I say it all out loud. It's ridiculous.
Ryan, I just sent you a text message. Can you just make sure that it wasn't compressed? I sent you a photo.
Yes. I'll check that. I think that's what that show.
I think HBO. That's you. I think that's you, Skrilla. I can't even make it out. It's some decent looking guy. It might be you. It might not be you though.
I think one thing that people don't know when they think about texting specifically, and I just read this big article about TikTok. I won't get into it too much, but I don't think that folks really know when they start to get into those apps and start to use those apps frequently that information is going to the application developer.
Oh,
so
totally.
There's one that just came through that's called Signal that encrypts your messages. I think it was actually Android native because Apple has some different type of security things. But I mean, if you're listening to the show and you put whatever you put on there, especially things like TikTok, especially things like Facebook Messenger and stuff, man, that shit's getting mined for data just in the same way that like your Alexa gets mined.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you guys scroll on Instagram, right? The ads are targeted towards you. I mean, I'm sure something we talk about on this podcast, it'll be on Instagram when I check it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually worked for me because
my Google Assistant is over there taking notes right now, and it's way smarter than I am. So after this, I'm going to be buying shit this afternoon I don't even know about yet, but I'm going to buy it. I'm sure it's exactly what I need to stay happy and make tomorrow better.
It's like anything amazing. There's two sides to it, right?
Amen.
There's like the great side where like I have really appreciated some of the Instagram ads that have popped up over quarantine in particular. I think because maybe even like remote jobs were like the least interrupted. I think that like the market targeting ad writers just like really got their shit together over COVID.
That's true.
Found some good stuff that I appreciated, but it is something to be aware of, and I think that's kind of just like how the world is now. It's easy for us because of the age we are to like remember what it was like without it, but I think it's one of those things now where it's sort of like, this is how the world works. So like just know that. It's not necessarily like a good or bad thing. And I think that especially people of like our age and older, because we remember what it was like without it, we like to call it good or bad rather than
it's just what it is, right?
It. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I always think just about like nefarious deeds and, things like that. But like, I know Ryan, he thinks about it like, no, man, like I don't want people mining my data, which is reasonable. I'm like, well, as long as you're not like doing shit you shouldn't be doing, I don't care who's listening. But those are completely separate issues, And the reality is they're all getting picked up. I care about one. Ryan cares about a different one. You know what I mean?
They're all connected, and it's again the context is important. So like, my question is always like, well, okay, well who's in charge of holding on to that data? Like, not all companies handle data the same. So like. I know from experience, just like throughout over a career, that like people do some really dumb stuff with computer files. And ultimately, when we talk about data, for anybody who feels like this, like they're zoning out now, it's all it is computer files that have information in them.
Yep.
That's it. At the end of the day, that's all it is. And it's a bunch of code written to tell one computer program how to do whatever it's going to do with that information, which it's only a couple things. It can store it, or it can share it, or it can read it, or it can edit it. So when you break it down to its simplest format, that's what you just kind of need to be aware of when you're signing a contract with a company, which is what you're doing when you download an app. You're signing a contract with that business that says, here's my information. In exchange, that's a lot of times why it's free. So like when you think about paying for an app, like that's one way that you can kind of like find some security, because like now you got skin in the game. Like it's a little bit more of a contract when I'm not just giving you whatever for free, because like, well, I just gave it to you for free. So like, I don't care.
It is funny though, right? Like you see some interesting app, you download it, you don't realize like you just gave all of your information to some 19-year-old in some foreign country, and who knows what the hell is where it's going next. You know what I mean? Like that's, and again, I'm kind of picturing or painting I think that's a realistic scenario though, right? Like you mentioned who stores it, who has the response. Well, the reality is whoever made the app gets the data, right? Like that's what's kind of strange. It's like when we go to websites, you know what I mean? Like there's not some huge policing of that. Like we would like to maybe naively hope there is. There, in theory there is, but it's not real. The mesh is pretty big. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
so,
we haven't hit that world yet.
Can I pivot away from scary data?
Yeah.
I would love it if you would be willing to maybe share a little bit about your activities during coronavirus. I mean, I know you literally transformed your home into a studio. I know you and Nicole were chatting with some of our students. So if you're willing, if you'd like to share, because I want to also talk about how we're able to kind of turn this off. So first tell us what you had on.
Wait, what? It's off or on?
No. What have you been up to? What have you been up to over
right till the end?
What have you been up to over coronavirus? And then I want us to all kind of talk a little bit about how we managed to turn this shit off. Like, because
I got you.
We're talking about doing shit all the time, work and fun and everything.
I got you. So my it's kind of one and the same. My focus over COVID has really been deepening my yoga practice on so many levels. And most of anybody who's listening that knows me, like that's no surprise. But I am a yoga teacher, and actually I started practicing yoga right around the time that Chris and I met. Kent State had or has an amazing rec center, and it's where Chris and I spent most of our time hanging out together, actually, in that gym. But I took my first yoga class at Kent State in that rec center, and over the years, it's been something that has been on and off. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I got certified to teach yoga. And so that's been like a big part of my life. And so as soon as everything shut down, we immediately just went to like teaching online. And so with my studio, Westside Yoga, we just instantly rallied to start filming classes on our Facebook page just for free, because like what else were we all going to do? And the whole Atlanta yoga community did that. The whole yoga community at large just like rallied. Yeah. Lillian Charles, who has been one of your past guests on the podcast, she rallied together a group of us who do mindfulness. So we did a whole weekly schedule of guided meditations with a group of us called Mindful Moments. And that's where Nicole and I started spending a lot of time together during COVID in these meditation sessions that happened every week. And for those of you who joined, I promise we'll start them up again in July. We took a little break for June, but and it has been really interesting to watch how first COVID and then the way that the world has shifted its focus to really rally around the Black Lives Matter movement. There was something that shifted for me the morning that I watched George Floyd get murdered, and it felt like all of these things were connected. Like being so aware of all of our humanity when we had to pause for a couple of months, and then feeling that that shift in energy and focus, and recognizing that this is not just about us like being able to pass the time. Like this pause in time is about us looking at ourselves fully in our truth, not just like finding these points of levity when we're stuck, not just trying to figure out how to open an economy back up, but how to heal as a country. How do you do that? And that at its core is what yoga is about. There's a Sanskrit word, svadhyaya. It's one of the core principles of yoga. It means self-study. And that's what this whole practice is about, all the limbs of it. And that has been the biggest thing that I have felt focused on during all of this is the humanity of all of us, for all that it is, and recognizing that we only have our individual selves that we have any sort of agency over, but there is no individualism because we're all connected, so it really is that link between the collective and the individual, and how we find that balance that I think we all need to really be reflecting on. And that's what I've been reflecting on. So that's a lot.
No, that's really well said.
That's really
Anna.
That's the answer. And I can really only say that now because I've spent so much of my time really trying to step away from some of the distractive stuff of like worrying about how to show up on social media, for example, and having conversations with the people I'm closest with. Mm-hmm. I've been taking some online courses with other yogis, and really studying the practice and trying to have those conversations with people and just feel where people are. And I think the one thing that everybody has in common is that they want there to be some sort of just camaraderie. We don't all have to like each other, but we have to get along with each other.
Yep.
It sounds
we're in it
silly,
together, but
it's
we're all in it together. We better figure out a better way to keep moving forward. I love you referred to and I may be paraphrasing you here, but we all got forced to pause everything. And you're right, the timing of it was, in hindsight, it's impossible to not think there's some connection there. That there was no other noise, and something really important just came on the TV. And there's nothing else to change the channel to. There's nothing else to watch. There's nothing else to distract you. This isn't going away. And I'm afraid that, had George Floyd been murdered a year ago at this time, it may have been, unfortunately, another drop in the bucket, which obviously is beyond tragic for a number of reasons. But the fact that it happened right when it did, I don't want to ever use the word grateful associated with any of this, but I am kind of glad that we were all at home together. Some of those conversations, hopefully that have been happening over these past weeks, there just wouldn't have been that, even though there should have been the time forced to make them, it just wouldn't have occurred. And I just feel like this has been the greatest opportunity for those conversations to happen, for that time to be taken. And, if we can't improve during this pause, that's a real scary reality.
Well, and I think the other piece of it is recognizing that it's not just about like while we're all paused either. So, you talked about rest like this. I'm not the first person to say this, but it's this is a marathon, not a sprint situation. Life is not, we're not just moving towards like some sort of end goal. Like there's no like finish line. This is about how we are, like how we exist. So in like the Yoga Sutras, for example, the first one is Atha Yoga Anushasanam, which is, and now the yoga begins. We start yoga. And the concept is that in every moment, in the present moment, right now is the only time.
Yeah.
Because immediately it's either the future, it's yet to happen and it hasn't happened yet, or it's already happened. And so it's always right now a choice. You always have a choice to recognize someone else's humanity, to be not just observant of what's going on, but an active participant in doing what is the right thing and as another human being in any moment in time. And it's the stuff as heavy as talking about racism in America. And it's as light as like just being aware that there's somebody else behind you when you're walking out of a door and not letting it shut on them. Like like when you're walking through a place, it's recognizing that it's the immediate moment is the time. It's not later. It's not when something else is qualified. Like it's the only thing is right now.
That reminds me, I think it probably is the podcast before this, Anna, the person, Hernan, that we interviewed talked a lot about perfect being the enemy of done, and like the risk of like waiting to start until you're ready to start. And I can't help but think that like those two messages, I think the message you delivered was a lot deeper than the one that he talked about. But I can't help but see how those two things compare. And, maybe talking about context, how in some cases, a higher level definition of like just getting your ass in gear is one way, but a deeper definition in a different context, like what you just gave, is so important because it's so easy to get confounded on what everybody else should do. And it's almost like a little bit easier to, I observe this. I think suffer from this, suffer is the right term, but it's almost easier to think about what everybody else should do before you think about actions in yourself. And I know being your spouse as you work through and continue to study yoga, I know that's a big part of, kind of getting yourself out of the way and learning about yourself so that you could breathe through what's going on. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. Hey, it's Ryan. Are you ever listening to something and wonder what the people look like? Well, fret not, listener. We have made a plan for you. You can get right over to our Instagram at conventioNOT_podcast and see pictures of most of our guests, either Mike's goofy ass and I, or anything you really want to. Go over there, again, at Instagram at conventioNOT_podcast. Take a second to follow us while you're there too.
Yeah. No, I like I said, that was really, really thorough and well put, Anna. And it honestly transitions into the latter part of that question perfectly, because I do know how committed you are to your practice. And I can't help but, and I hate to like change my tone and tilt my head, but the reality is like, right? Well, is that dedication is consuming. And it can be consuming. It's one thing when we have a job, right? And you're a workaholic and this or that. And, let's talk about shutting that off. But when you literally turn your house into a studio And it's the emphasis is on the self-eval and, growth and helping other. There's no clocking out. So, and this isn't just directed at you, Anna. I'll point fingers. Ryan is a total workaholic. Like, he likes to talk on the phone. Anyone nowadays who still likes to talk on the phone is a straight up businessman. And we all know he is a serial businessman.
Yep.
Skrilla is just pumping out new music constantly. I don't know if you're checking this dude's feed, but every day he's on a new placement. Like, I didn't know Skrilla 2 years ago, but this dude's trajectory is like, it's something.
That's not new either. Like, forever.
No, that's exactly.
There's no slump.
I wonder if, like, I know we're tight on time here, but if we can just throw around some thoughts or actual practices of how the hell do you go to sleep at night? Ryan, when do you take your earbud out? Skrilla, when do you stop writing rhymes, like, in your head? Because this is a real, for me, it's a real problem. It's a real problem to turn it off. When I've been thinking about a car accident for 30 hours straight, when I lay down in bed, it's hard to just turn on The Office. I'm still thinking about that shit.
Well, for me, I also suffer from the same problem because I have a difficult time just turning it off. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to establish some boundaries for myself, certain hours that I just will not work past, like answer emails or do anything like that. But you know what? I love what I do. I mean, I truly love what I do. Living alone here, like, it gets lonely, and working on music definitely helps me feel less lonely and less isolated.
Gotcha.
So especially during this whole COVID pandemic, I've just been nonstop. I mean, I was nonstop before, but now I'm just like extra nonstop. And I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, but it at least helps with my sanity.
Well, it's honest. Like, what I just heard is like, I'd like to be able to turn it off, but currently I'm not real good at that. Like,
I am not.
Ryan, how you doing on your shutdown?
Maybe you shouldn't ask me. Maybe you should ask him. Right?
Well, it's going to be harder. It's going to be harder for you to bullshit when I can look at her face the whole time.
Yeah, that's true, right? That's true. Luckily, we're close to the end. Anna has to teach a yoga class here at some point in time. So maybe I'll filibuster till then.
You cannot filibuster. I was going to say.
So I think I take most value in my life when I'm completing projects. And so for me, it is a balance, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but it is a balance of keeping personal projects elevated as such, even as mundane as they might be, right? Like this weekend, I have to scrub my sneakers. And so that's a whole big show. Maybe I'll put some of that on the
He's
convention
serious?
Instagram.
That's not like a euphemism he has to clean his sneakers.
Yeah. And so
and
like,
mine.
yeah, I clean hers too.
Good man.
And so I kind of use that example because it, it goes throughout the times, but ultimately I really do try to make sure when I sit down and plan out a week, because I have my like day job and then I have other associated businesses, I have mentorship, and then I have things to self-care for me. The project component of it is important for me to keep in line so that I put the projects that are personal projects
itself.
there.
It forces itself. Yeah. Gotcha.
Now, I will say, speaking of forcing, it doesn't always allow for downtime. And so when I crash hard. But it's only been over the past couple of years where I have found that I have to make sure, whether it's something like a yoga thing or whether it's meditation, but I have to make sure that some of those project tasks on a daily basis for me is to complete those things. And then the very last thing that I do is that like when I go somewhere or like we go on vacation or we do like a long weekend kind of thing, I really do unplug in systematic time. So like Skrilla said, like I try to be done with working when we're on like vacation time by like 10:30 or 11. I get up, I do my thing, and I just get that stuff done. And I know that might sound ridiculous to people about like working on vacation, but the grind is what the grind is. I want to save time for you to respond. And I see you like grinning over there, but like, well, I'm like, Chris, like I love it. Right. So like, that's just what I do.
I just wanted to just clarify, basically Ryan's way of unwinding is by doing more work.
That's
I feel it.
And that
right?
Sorry, man, like because I hate to
It's fun
use
stuff,
I
though.
hate to use
No
this,
judgment.
I hate to use this word, and I'm afraid I threw it at our last guest as well, the guy that does daily podcasts, because he was very open about like he doesn't turn it off. You know, him and his wife are watching a movie and he's on his laptop like working on his next business. And when you're a CEO, when you're like selling something, when you're crunching numbers, it's not as concerning, but there is another word for that sort of behavior, and it's addict. You know what I mean? And it's just, it doesn't matter what you're addicted to. Let's all be honest about that, right? Like being addicted to something means you're not A, you're dependent on it, and B, the effect of that is that you're not as available to the other people in your lives that tend to care about you. I'm glad to hear that none of you take it off or turn it off by medication, because I think I think a lot of people turn their work off by boozing themselves to sleep every night, or by doing other things.
It's hard to judge it. You know, it's hard to judge what people do to cope, right? Like medication's a coping mechanism. And like, I don't want to like get into, you know, the whole prescription drug thing. I mean, like we could talk for another hour on that. I think that, and this will be like a neat little bow because we've got like 3 minutes, but I think that for me, like the long-term thing, like there are a lot of like methods, right? Like there are a lot of like things that I do. Like I like video games. I like that, but like it's an escape for my brain.
So they do exist. Anna is a beautiful grown woman who literally likes video games, and her spouse has no interest in them. So hot gamers, for all you gamers out there, they really do exist. So all right, go on, you unicorn.
Can we do a gaming episode with Anna in the future?
Yeah, yes, I hope so.
100%.
Okay, I'm done.
I would love to do that.
Yeah, I think you just placed yourself in the future. This
perfect.
Yeah, we there's a lot of hangers with this episode, so it's taken a long time to get you on, and I really appreciate you rolling up this way.
It's good. It's good.
You know, to be casual about it. So I think we are coming really to the end of the show today,
okay.
And we'll get some things rescheduled. Like we said, Anna has to get on to West Side Yoga. I want to give her a chance to
finish my thought.
Well, finish your thought, but also tell us how to follow you and tell us like where you are and all those other kinds of things so that you could get on to your next thing. Also manage the time.
I'm just now getting comfortable to throw a little jab in there. All right. So I think that for me, ultimately, and it's really been amplified and clarified in this like recent, you know, last 6 months or so, is that being present is the best way to relax. Because when you practice not thinking about all the things at once, so like trying to monotask some of the things that you're doing, it gets easier to just do the thing. Because for me, some of the things that make me exhausted are trying to think about all the things at once. So if I try to be in the moment, I'm fully talking to you guys, looking at you on the screen right now, having this conversation, and then you know, I'm going to fully switch gears to go be on a screen to teach a yoga class, but I'm going to fully do that. And I know we still have to make dinner tonight and I'll have to solve that, but I'm going to try to like not think about that. So I'm fully present for what the task at hand is. And the more that I practice that, the less I have to think about what am I going to do to unplug, because I'm just doing the thing always. And then it's not hard to just exist.
I really like that advice, Anna. I'm gonna try to get better at that myself. It makes sense to me. Honestly, it's like it's easier said than done, but it does make sense, right? If you're just thinking about one thing all the time, that's not exhausting. It's not, you know, that's not too anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So I'll come back, but my Instagram is at Mrs._McD, and you can follow me there. And my other Instagram is @sunorStorm. And so I'm trying to do a better job of posting content. I'll probably try to keep, the sun or storm really yoga focused. So if that's what you're into and you want more of that, like that's the place to go. But
Thanks
Instagram,
so much, Anna.
that's my spot. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you so much for joining us today.
I love all of you.
Yeah, you were
This is
great.
really fun. I know you guys